Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You of course can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And we've done it again. We've made it to the end of the week. Welcome to Friday's edition of the DCEU Daily. Without any huge DCEU, DC live action updates, I'm going to give you a hot take. DC live action in its entirety is better than Marvel and MCU live action, and I'm going to explain why. Because Marvel live action when I was growing up was pretty shit. We had a shitty Captain America movie, did we? We had Thor in The Incredible Hulk Returns. That's really cringy. But anyway, let's compare them, because I'm not really talking about Marvel Comics versus DC Comics. I still think that's superior. But my knowledge of the comic book genre to pick up and read is very scattered, so I wouldn't be talking from any knowledge. But when you ask me about DC live action versus Marvel live action, DC are the absolute winners. But how, Mike? Where were Marvel in the 50s? When we had, well, not we, because I wasn't alive, but people had, when TV was just invented, an awesome, for the time, brilliant Superman live action TV show, The Adventures of Superman, starring George Reeves and Phyllis Coates. George Reeves played Clark Kent and Superman, and Phyllis Coates at first in the movie played Lois Lane, then Noel Neill took over, I think, when it went to colour. So that's how DC live action started. Oh, where was Marvel live action? Oh yeah, Marvel hadn't been invented yet, because DC was here a lot longer than Marvel. In fact, Marvel Comics and Stan Lee would never have even been fucking invented if it wasn't for DC. All right, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and all those great people, you know, and Jack Kirby has been involved with some DC stuff as well, of course, but they weren't around. So that's how it first started. So they had that series, then George Reeves tragically took his own life, if you believe everything you hear and you read. I don't. That's another video for another time. Fascinating story. But George was a great actor. Never really was proud of playing Superman. He felt he was a lot better than that, and he believes if Mark Sandridge, director who was his mentor, didn't die in the war, he would have been making great movies. He also played, I think he played a twin or something in Gone with the Wind. So he definitely had a big future in front of him. So he's not one of these guys who was proud to be playing Superman, but personally, from what I've seen of him, and it's very dated, and it's before my time, he still did a good job at the time. But no Marvel. Marvel wasn't about. Marvel came out in the 60s. So anyway, in the 60s, right, and there was definitely no Marvel TV shows or movies even then, we had a Batman television show. Dinner, Batman. Ooh, ooh. I love that show. And I love it today because it's fun. Yes, the MCU call themselves fun, but this really was fun. It was a campy time in the industry, and they did something campy and funny, but it was sometimes serious. But the adaptation of these DC characters in the Batman verse actually was very well done. These were, I mean, Caesar Romeo as the Joker, I mean, he was a great actor. And all the people who played the Rogues Gallery were great. And, you know, the actor who played Batman, forgot his name now, know him, love him, passed away, of course. And then we got Burt Wood as Robin, great. I think it was about 3 or 4 seasons long. Absolutely fantastic. And then that went away. We had a Super Friends animated series. That was cool for the time. Still, I can't remember anything from Marvel. Was it the 60s or 70s or 80s when we had Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends? Although this is not live action, but I'm just talking in television and film terms. I actually loved Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. That was my introduction to Spider-Man. It wasn't through the comics. And I even enjoyed that crap. Was it Nicholas Hoult or whoever it was who played Spider-Man in a live action TV series? But I actually used to enjoy it. And I used to go on the tiles in the kitchen and pretend I was Spidey. Pretty cool. But again, at this moment in time, DC are reigning supreme. So then we get to the 70s, and you know, I'm not really that deeper expert on what Marvel were doing in the early days, but anyway, I'll still say forever that DC TV and movies are far superior than anything Marvel have ever done. Maybe I'm biased. Check that, I am biased. It's okay to be biased. So we get to 1976, where they decide to make a Superman movie. No, this was not Warner Brothers' decision. Warner Brothers owned DC Comics. They could have made a Superman movie or any DC characters movie whenever they wanted, but they didn't think of it. So a Hungarian man and his son, Ilya and Alexander Salkind, decided to invest in a Superman movie, but not just any Superman movie. They were going to put money in it. It wasn't Alexander who saw the potential of this, it was his son Ilya. And basically, Alexander asked his son Ilya, is he known this Superman? Because they just come off to, what's it called? Oh my God, yeah. They just came off 2 Three Musketeer movies, which were pretty cool back then, by the way. Later on, they would make a Santa Claus the movie, which was made on the same scale as Superman the movie, and it felt very similar in a lot of ways. Kind of an origin story, but a great kind of movie. So these were really ambitious guys, and they invested a lot of money. They at first had Guy Hamilton to direct Superman the movie, but Guy, because when they decided they wouldn't film, they were going to film in the UK instead of Australia or wherever they were. No, I'll tell you the story if you're interested. Because they brought Marlon Brando on as Jor-El, they couldn't film in Italy because Brando and Bertolucci, who obviously Bertolucci directed Brando in Last Tango in Paris, and Italy still weren't happy with them over that movie, so Brando couldn't do the movie there. So because it was cheaper to make it in the UK, the Salkinds decided to make it there. Guy Hamilton was a tax exile in London in the UK, so he couldn't come. So it was a choice between Marlon Brando and Guy Hamilton. Of course, who'd you choose? Marlon Brando. And so they went to Dick Donner, and because he'd just come off the hit The Omen, which is a great movie if you've never seen it before. Yeah, pays that myth that a horror movie director can't make a great movie, aka people who say Andy Muschietti isn't going to make a great Flash movie. You've already been proved wrong with David F. Sandberg as well. And Jesus Christ, Zack Snyder comes off that kind of a weird kind of zombie movie. And now we can see the kind of fantastical, great, epic, gritty things that he's made as well. So Dick Donner came in and he made Superman the movie one of the hardest, toughest things he ever had to do. It was really, really tough to make that movie, because how do you convincingly make a man fly in the 1970s? But ultimately, Dick Donner made a great movie. He fell out with the Salkinds, they sacked him. He couldn't make Superman 2, but that franchise had started, so we had 3 other Superman films to treasure. Were they perfect? No. Superman 4 has its issues, but I also enjoyed it as I think a 14-year-old lad going to see it. I love Nuclear Man, as cheap and as bad and as corny as he seemed. So I enjoyed those 4 movies. Still, Marvel weren't doing anything to be respected. So then we had a long break. But then we got Superboy. Again, the Salkinds produced this, and this was based not on the Connor Kent Superboy, but Superman as a young boy being Superboy. So I don't know if this was set in Smallville or if it was set in Metropolis. I can't remember. I think it was set in Smallville. Anyway, they did about 4 seasons of that. I think they started with one actor, then I think they went with Gerard Christopher afterwards, if I remember rightly. Anyway, a great series as well. So we left that behind. Through the years, there was talk of more Superman movies with Christopher Reeve, but it never happened. Then, in 2001, just after 9/11, the pilot of Smallville hit the WB network screens. The WB network would actually become, in season 5 of Smallville, the notorious network called the CW. Enough said about them, the better. And Al Miles, the creators of Smallville, by the way, fell out with them, and that's why they went to court with WB-TV. Again, another story for another time. Anyway, Smallville changed everything, because this was a modern-day retelling of the origins of Superman that lasted 10 years. Now, if you want to compare DC TV and Marvel TV, there's nothing to be compared. Because when I look at Smallville, and let's focus on Smallville as something to say Smallville is better superhero TV than anything Marvel have ever done. Now, you're going to throw Daredevil in my face. Daredevil had one really good epic season, and I think after that, it wasn't very good. Now, Smallville may not have had the money and the Netflix support that Daredevil had, and the Jessica Jones show had, and all those shows had, and Punisher, but Smallville was consistent for 10 seasons. It was bringing people in, it was doing great things, it was bringing other Superman actors from other interpretations, from movies, cameoing. They adapted so many DC characters so well. This is one of the best live action adaptations of these DC characters, and it's amazing. And they really told a great kind of Lex Luthor pre-Superman story, you know, a Lex and Clark story, and it was amazing. Smallville's just recently celebrated its 20th anniversary, and if you're in America, you can now buy the first Blu-ray box set of the whole series. Unfortunately, people like me can't do that. People like me can't buy Lois and Clark on Blu-ray or DVD on a box set season 1 because it's only available to you Americans. Warner Brothers, wake the fuck up. I can't even buy it on Amazon Video. Wake the fuck up. Anyway, we're celebrating live action DC and basically proving beyond a reasonable doubt why it's so more superior than Marvel. And so Smallville was cancelled, and then we started getting Marvel movies in the cinema screen. So we got things like Bryan Singer's X-Men and X-Men 2, two of the best comic book movies ever made. Then we got Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2, again, two of the best comic book movies ever made. These are the things where you can hold them up and say they're actually a lot better than a lot of the DC stuff DC did at that point. It's definitely not better than Superman the movie, and I could argue it's not better than Superman 2 either, but these movies are great. You know, these 4 Marvel movies are fantastic. So then we move into the later noughties, and we reach 2005, where DC and Warner Brothers task indie director Christopher Nolan to make a Batman movie. Christopher Nolan really wanted to make one with comic book writer David S. Goyer. Batman Begins is one of my favourite comic book movies ever made. But it wasn't the first superior movie that made a lot of money. No, it was the second less superior movie than Batman Begins that made all the money, as Christopher Nolan came back with The Dark Knight. This is still one of the most beloved comic book live action CBMs ever made. I love it. I still don't think it's as good as Batman Begins. So again, we're kind of doing okay here in DC live action. Then we get The Dark Knight Rises, which people like but don't love. And so, but in 2008, the MCU and Kevin Feige would be born. And people weren't overly in love with the MCU at first. People loved the first Iron Man. It made record-breaking money. And Marvel Studios, this was pre-Disney, pre the Disney ownership. But slowly but surely, Disney would get involved. We then got Iron Man 2, which is one of the most boringest films. Anyway, the DCEU was born in 2013 with Man of Steel. So, what's superior to you? If you're a Marvel fan or a DC fan, whatever. You know, put your bias at the door. What's a better movie? Iron Man or Man of Steel? You let me know down in the comments. For me, Man of Steel is a much more superior first movie, but that's just my opinion. And then I think this is kind of a simple question. What's a better movie? Iron Man 2, which is the most boring load of shit I've ever had the displeasure of watching in CBM history, comic book movie history. And at the same time, our second movie in the DCEU, yes, I say our, that's how I class it, as ours, because I'm a DC fan and a DCEU stan. Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice, the Ultimate Edition. This is much better than Iron Man 2, which was also the MCU's second movie, and BVS, the Ultimate Edition, is the DCEU's second movie. A much better film. It's epic, it's 3 hours long, Snyder kills it, it's a very controversial film, but it made just under $1 billion in the global box office. That's not bad for a film that's so divisive. It's a great movie. The studio weren't happy with it because of all the controversy and the divisiveness and the under $1 billion thing. I think that's the thing that really bothered them. But it's a much better film than Iron Man 2. Then we go to a theatrical version of David Ayer's Suicide Squad. I don't want to get into the histrionics. I think Incredible Hulk is the MCU's third movie, but I'm not sure about that. But if we compare the theatrical cut to the not David Ayer movie Suicide Squad, I believe it's a much more entertaining movie than The Incredible Hulk. To be clear, I really love Ed Norton in that movie. I think it's great. I think Liv Tyler's great in here, and I think the whole cast and the director did a great job. But there were issues behind the scenes, as there was with the Suicide Squad, the first Suicide Squad movie. And so then we go to our fourth DCEU movie, and we go to Wonder Woman starring Gal Gadot, officially totally directed by Patty Jenkins, nudge nudge, wink wink. But it's a great film. It stumbles to about 800 million after a re-release in theatres again, and it did really, really well. It's one of my favourite comic book movies of all time. Credit for this movie must go to Alan Hyman? Is that his name? Anyway, Alan Hyman had wrote Wonder Woman in the comics. His knowledge was immense, and you could tell the love and care he put in the story, which he wrote alongside Zack Snyder, and in the screenplay. It was great. And much better than, I don't know what come after The Incredible Hulk. Was it 4? I think it was 4. Yes, Wonder Woman is a much better film than 4. I'm going to lose myself with which order these MCU movies come in. But anyway, we then leap to Joss Whedon's version of Justice League, which is shit. Now, I can't even show off about this film, and now it's not even canon to me. It's not in the slate of movies. It's Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut, so that's how we get to compare the next Marvel movie, but we don't do that, no. We compare Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut with Avengers, actually, all the Avengers movies, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Age of Ultron, the first Avengers movie, and Avengers Endgame, all those movies against Zack Snyder's Justice League movie, which is 4 hours long. I believe that Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut is far superior to all the Avengers movies ever made, and that's just my opinion. But the first Avengers movie by Joss Whedon is solid. The second one has a lot of missteps. It's okay and interesting. It goes a bit darker. Not my cup of tea. And then you've got Avengers Infinity War, which is a really, really good movie. I think that gives the Snyder Cut a run for its money. But unfortunately, because that's a really great, epic, gritty, dark movie, Feige did what he always does and cracks a joke after a bit of a somberness in his franchise. And he gives us Avengers Endgame, which is pretty much an adaptation of Back to the Future 2. And they even tell us in the film, yes, that Back to the Future 2 is just a film. I think all films should, when I write something, so if I write a story, Dallas isn't a television show, no. Dallas is something that my characters could meet those characters because it's all fictional. And I think the fictional world should stay fictional, and that's just my opinion. Unless you're doing a story that I'm working on right now, which is a character who taps into a way to put the real world into the fantasy world, is something I'm working on, I don't really want to talk about. It's to do with Smallville, actually, and I do a lot of kind of fan fiction with Smallville. Anyway, so Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut is better than all the Avengers movies. So we then go to Aquaman, a really good standalone movie. This is a film that had to make it after Justice League. It did, over $1 billion. This is better than any MCU solo movie. Now, you could argue that Captain America the Winter Soldier is superior, but that's a sequel. This is an origin movie, so we're not going to compare origin movies and sequels, because that's not fair. I think Captain America and the Winter Soldier is on par with Batman vs Superman. because there are other MCU characters in it as well. So, Aquaman's a great movie. Then we get Shazam, another great origin movie, but it's kind of Marvel-y. But it's interesting, it still has that DCEU darkness. There's loads of DCEU Snyder Easter eggs. For me, it's a very successful and enjoyable movie for the family. And you can compare Shazam with Ant-Man. And Ant-Man's okay. I thought it was okay. I don't think it's terrible. But I think Shazam is a much superior movie. So then then this is when we start getting some placeholder movies. Walter Hamada has come in after all the problems with Zack Snyder, and he's got to rework this franchise, so he gives us some placeholders. 3 placeholders to be exact. That's Kathy Yan's and Margot Robbie's, because she was leading the narrative in this movie, and it's Birds of Prey and the emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Fantabulous emancipation. This is where we get a bit controversial. It's an exercise in man-bashing and women-blaming men for everything that goes wrong in their lives. I think the film is kind of well-directed. The action isn't great, but I think if you take the man-bashing out of it, I think if you're a Harley fan, you can enjoy it. Then there's Wonder Woman 84. This is a film with so many problems. I think at the heart of it and its message, it's not problematic. But if you compare it to the first Wonder Woman, it just proves that Patty Jenkins had very little to do, apart from having her names on the credits as director as a Patty Jenkins film. But it's not on the level of the other DCEU movies. And yes, I can say that most Marvel sequels, if not all of them, are superior to this one. Then we get the surprise because Disney fired James Gunn, and Marvel Studios and Disney fired James Gunn for some historical tweets about children. They were supposed to be jokes, James Gunn jokes, but at the end of the day, I don't think he deserved to lose his job. Maybe a temporary suspension, so they made their point clear. Ultimately, he went back and he's developing Guardians 3 now. I like the Guardians movies, I like James Gunn. But yesterday I was watching the director's commentary of James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. He made it clear that Bloodsport and Peacemaker are a demonstration of toxic masculinity. I was enjoying the commentary before then. Now basically they're not toxic males, they're alphas. But to these Hollywood people, that's the same thing. And obviously, he's made an alpha male, someone who's part of toxic masculinity, scared of a rat. Oh, the big tough guy, scared of a rat. I think men like James Gunn were probably bullied by alphas at school. I was bullied by alphas at school. It doesn't mean I hold up to this toxic masculinity bullshit or hating alpha males. It happened. I've moved on from it. I was already shy. I didn't have confidence. They weren't right to do it to me. But life is full of bullies. And there's many bullies in Hollywood, and you can take my word for that. Anyway, but it's interesting that Harley Quinn, a psychopath serial killer that's killed many innocent people, is deemed by James Gunn as not such a bad person. That's disappointing. But something else I noticed, and maybe if Bobcat's watching, and I don't know if Bobcat watches my videos anymore, maybe you can answer me this in the comments, Bobcat. So they get rid of that thing where she's property of the Joker, whatever it is, and says property of no one. Yeah, typical feminist Margot Robbie stuff there. But then, just above her breast, she's still got that one that says, Daddy's Little Monster. So I'm a bit confused. They got rid of a couple of tattoos that they didn't like. There's one up there called Damaged or whatever it is. Apparently they both didn't like the Damaged tattoo. I don't know what the big fucking deal is, man. Anyway, so they kept the Daddy's Little Monster one. So it's a bit weird and ironic and hypocritical. If you don't like the Joker or a man, a toxic man, as basically again James Gunn in the commentary calls the Joker. Big mistake, by the way, James, not involving Jared Leto's the Joker in that movie. You actually would have had some people going to see the movie. But ultimately, I like James Gunn. I don't dislike the man. I think he's talented to a point, but I also think he's a one-trick pony. But my opinion of The Suicide Squad is that it's a very good film for what it's attempting to do. It doesn't attempt to do anything different than James Gunn's done before. Group of people, kind of bad, not so bad, they're all right really. They get themselves in a lot of shit. He kills a lot of people in this movie, but pre the movie, in the marketing, he says, don't get too attached. But it's okay, everyone. We could get attached to Harley Quinn because he didn't have the guts to kill her off, or maybe we can't kill off women. Did they kill off any women in this movie? A couple of kind of insignificant ones, but like the main characters, right, weren't killed off. I like the Suicide Squad. As I say, I like James Gunn. How does it compare to Marvel movies? Well, in a lot of ways, it's one of these movies where you watch it, you like it, but it's not going to have a special place in your heart. Well, I'm just talking from my personal perception. I'm not talking about you, of course. But it's good. And I think, I don't know, you can't really compare it to any of the Marvel movies. It's good. It's equally as good as any Marvel movie. That's what I say. So, we've reached the end of our DCEU story so far. And despite this franchise, the DCEU, having a couple of misses, what you cannot do at the beginning of this franchise, when Batman vs Superman and Man of Steel and Suicide Squad come out, laughingly say the DCEU sucks and the MCU doesn't, and it's better than The Godfather and bullshit like this, just because the DCEU dared to have a dark colour palette and serious kind of commentary and serious drama and, you know, telling a story and deconstructing characters like Superman and Batman, but as I've explained before, reconstructing them as well. That doesn't make a film, you know, comic book movie franchise suck. And if you think something sucks because someone's actually putting some effort into the work rather than worrying about which person is going to be offended about what is, you know, what this person's doing to their favourite character and actually doing something special, then I think you really don't understand movies. In fact, you may not even understand comic book characters. Because the DCEU, as a franchise of films, is so much better. Yes, the MCU has a connective tissue. So if you want to say that makes it a better franchise, as a franchise, maybe it is better with the connectivity. But if you take the DCEU movie by movie and compare it to what you've seen of the MCU, for example, we are going to get a Batgirl movie, a Blue Beetle movie. They're doing proper movies on HBO Max. I can't see any of that over with MCU and Disney Plus. So they're giving us some series, but when I look at those series, I don't think if you didn't see them, you'd really miss anything. WandaVision was good. It's probably the best one. That's not saying much, but they haven't left an impression on me. So, I state today that DC live action is much more and higher superior, let me try and get my words out, superiority than the Marvel live action universe, including the somewhat, apparently, allegedly superior MCU. Because I think the MCU is just a bunch of movies that you watch once, you digest, and then you forget about them. They don't even give you bloating. You forget them. They're that meal that you eat, doesn't taste incredibly great or incredibly bad. You digest it, and you forget about it. And that's what the MCU is. But the DCEU, everyone, is unforgettable. Man of Steel should have won multiple Oscars. Batman vs Superman should have won multiple Oscars. Suicide Squad is okay. Wonder Woman is one of the best comic book movies ever made. Zack Snyder's Snyder Cut is one of the best comic book movies ever made. Aquaman is great. Shazam is great. You know, Birds of Prey and, you know, things like that. Birds of Prey and Wonder Woman 84. Some people like them, some people don't. But they're actually, in a way, kind of MCU-y movies because they're easily forgotten. But seeing we've had 11 DCEU movies and you say, like, 2 of them are forgettable, errors in judgment by the people who created them, that's not bad. 9 pretty epic and awesome movies out of 11. And it doesn't matter about Rotten Tomatoes scores because that's not how people from my generation judge things. We judge things from our personal enjoyment. And as a set of films in a franchise, the DCEU is much more superior than the MCU. And I'd like to know your opinions on this in the comments down below. DC live action has been doing stuff before Marvel was even invented. Have a think about that for a minute. This has been the DCEU Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this perfection. And I'll be back again tomorrow with even more DCEU Daily. Until then, goodbye.